Alright, hello and welcome to the Mike Make Stuff stream, second episode for this week, making up for last week. This is not the piece I'm working on tonight, this is something I'm working on for a client, but I had to rush back to get here and get everything set up. So, I've got my coffee in hand, thank you to the kind people at Dunkin' Donuts, and we're ready to get started here. Iron Fist came out today, started watching it. I'm only about 2 episodes in, so I can't really speak to the quality therein. But it makes this a little bit more relevant, right? We kind of have, I don't know, Danny looks older and wiser and a little bit better built here than he does in any of the production shots. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I'm kind of just going to jump into inking here. What happened last time was got some reference photos. We went and started. Let's dial it back a little bit. This is what we had at the end of our first episode. I took a really quick drawing, kind of got out the concept of we've got the Iron Fist meditating and working through all the there's a specific word for it. The muscle memory of various martial arts techniques, punches and kicks and blocks and fun stuff like that. And then I noted that this looked weird and not quite right, so I went and made some reference and peeled some of this back. And I did a quick reference of you can see here with my there you can see a little bit better. I drew in a lot of the body from the reference and then started drawing it on top of it. Now I also made a mistake, as you can see from last time, which is that I kind of just put one on top of the other, and the way I'm going to resolve that is I'm going to turn this whole thing into a reference for the next layer. If you're familiar at all with the comic book process, you know that you have the writer hands in a script, then it usually goes to the pencilers. Once upon a time there were people who did just the storyboards, so you would have people who delivered thumbnails and the storyboards to the pencilers, who would then take care of anatomy and composition and some acting and stuff, and then go to the inker and so on and so forth. And a lot of the times the line, and then you go to your colorist and your letter, not to jump around too much. A lot of the time the line between border, penciler, and inker is plotter, not border. It is confused and rolled up into one thing called artist, or if there's an artist credit, it's usually the penciler if there's another inker involved. And infrequently these days do you hear about a plotter being involved on a project that they didn't just go ahead and draw. And because I'm working digitally, there's not a lot of use in spending too much time being specific with something that isn't the quality of line that you want it to be. So doing pencils to the detail of inks and then having to ink over them really doesn't serve any purpose, because nobody else has to come in here and ink this, it's just me. And there's no medium difference. It's not like with pencil, you want to get everything specific on your paper because then you can erase it, and once you start putting ink down you can't do that. Digital media makes that unnecessary, and some people who do really specific dark pencils will go ahead and just have them inked from there. I'm going to start inking here, and I'm going to start here in the pants because I know there's some really dark, heavy areas, some spot blacks, and that's going to help me kind of ground the whole piece, but also work my way up and down and engage things a little bit more effectively. And if I need to go and correct a fold, this looks like a drawing, not like a real thing. uh, having that grounded area that works well already is going to make it a lot easier. So I'm going to get a larger brush and start filling some of this in. There are great cross-hatching brushes out there if you have to fill a large area with cross-hatching. But I'm choosing not to do it this way for a couple of reasons. When you're first laying in spot blacks, having control over how you feather out an area is really helpful. And there's something very cathartic and relaxing about cross-hatching. So I will choose to procrastinate and not use my time as effectively as possible because it's fun and I like it. Remember that even when you need to get up close to work on something, it's important to go back and take your distance. This looks like a really big hatch from out here, but then you get up close, or you move further away, and it's not anymore. I'm not super in love with some of what's going on there in the groin right now, because I used a larger brush to fill in an area quickly, and then used it for some of the feathering, and I don't think that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and fill in these really big areas, because it helps me, like I said, ground it and figure things out, and then I can go back and make nice feathering. So just taking a second to reflect on what I said I would do and where we've gotten so far. I think we're getting there. It's starting to take some shape. It's getting a little bit more solid, and I'll probably work it out to the knees on both sides, get the legs, the thighs looking the way I'd like them to, and then move my way up. I don't want to do a ton of real specific hatching too early, because that makes it very difficult to work out values elsewhere, and it's very easy to incline yourself to work a full range of values in a narrow area. This area is not necessarily going to have the brightest brights and the darkest darks, and furthermore, it's the inks. I may not color this, but I tend to ink like I'm going to come back and color it. Not everything has to be included in the line art. So, I'm going to flip my lights on real quick, so that's going to take me a second, and I'll be back. I know you guys can't see any difference, but it makes a huge difference for me. So one of the things I want to point out here is something I'm doing right, something I'm doing wrong. Something I'm doing wrong is that you really shouldn't try and whittle up your lines. If you can get a really nice, graceful, thin to thick, that's always going to look better than if you build it up over and over and over again. That being said, when you zoom out, sometimes you can't tell the difference. A lot of the times you can't tell the difference, and it ends up not mattering to begin with. What I'm doing right here is that the human body, all organic things in general, they don't do a lot of straight. And so things that we might appreciate as straight in the abstract, like the torso, really isn't. And particularly when you have muscle involved, it's important to not interpret this as just a straight, you don't want to draw that as a straight line. It makes the figure more abstracted. When you can throw in the fact that there is a little bit of hip muscle there and hip bone, even on a very toned person, that's gonna reinforce the impression that it's a real living thing that you're drawing, as opposed to the idea of a thing. getting towards the end here, so I decided that I would like to spend some time on the face. I kind of like this face more than I like most faces. It's definitely not a young Danny, and that would be a problem if I had obligated myself in any way to do a young Danny. But I'm enjoying this older face with some more character, so I'm gonna ride it out, learn what I can learn. watching a couple techniques at a time here. Hard inks, hatching, and then this layer is really my dump layer. This is me experimenting with where I want areas of shadow to be, but not throwing them in because they're gonna be so dark. They're gonna be black, like here at the bottom. I don't want to run into an issue where I put in black and it's just so saturated or it destroys features or something like that. So this is really mapping out the value, and then I can paint in the hatching over it or add multiply layers and stuff like that, and that's going to give me a better blueprint for going through and making sure that it all works the way I want it to. Now seems a pretty appropriate time to wrap up, so I'm going to throw this back on there and say this is a representation of where we're at for the whole thing. At this point, the inking is probably going to take, I'd say, another hour or two. I may do that between now and the next stream because I think you've seen most of the techniques I'm going to use here. How I approach the cloth, how I approach the musculature, how I approach hair and fibers, and that's probably the most meaningful stuff here. And I would like to devote the last 2 streams of the month to working up the rest of the image and some of the other stuff. I'd like to avoid another month of only finishing some primary stuff and leaving this to be refinished later. But if you have questions, concerns, things you'd specifically like to see, message me on the Facebook page, message me on the YouTube page, subscribe. I think we have 2 subscribers right now. When we get up to 100, I get to have a Vandy channel, so you can search me a little bit more easily. And you should also see some interesting updates coming to the next stream. Anyway, thank you for checking in for the second time this week. And this is Mike Makes Stuff.